Yo guys, Gen here, bringing you some more Call of Duty Black Ops 7 content, with today's video being around the Apocalypse Master Camo grind for Warzone, with an overview of the grind in itself, my experiences, tips and tricks to help new players with achieving this awesome camo faster, whilst also discussing all of the relevant aspects such as the Haven's Hollow and Verdansk maps, the Rebirth Island, all of the weapons, and even strategies or key landing spots which work better or worse on this journey, and how all of these factors will each influence the camo grind and help you guys who have clicked on this video and want to learn how to get the Apocalypse camo, and of course if you're like myself wanted to get the Nexus master camo for getting all 4 master camos in this game. So sit back, stay tuned, and let's get right into it. So first things first, just a quick overview for myself. This was the final master camo for me to unlock. The Apocalypse grind in itself was the 4th and final master camo I needed to unlock on this game, having to try and get the Nexus master camo, which is the rarest camo in the game, arguably, having already unlocked Singularity first in public matches in multiplayer, Infestation in zombies, and then Genesis in Endgame, leaving just this insane looking master camo to unlock. The overall experience on itself of unlocking this camo was honestly very easy, arguably the easiest out of it all, but that of course depends on several factors, which I'll address shortly. It was probably my least favorite grind, but the camo in itself, the appearance, the aesthetics of this looking gun is incredible, and I'll leave that for you guys to let me know down below, guys, in the comments on what you think the best master camo is in this game based on appearance alone. But as well as this, it's also probably the easiest, it's arguably the quickest relative to how skilled you are at this game, but taking advantage of the casual game mode to grind out some of the harder weapons, or of course as many as you want, can significantly save you time. And these are the sort of tips that I'll identify throughout the video to help you guys unlock this camo in one full day of game time, because that is roughly how long it took myself. I think I did it in slightly less than that, but the military camos are the first that you need to unlock in this game, which is pretty standard across all of the categories in this game. It's literally get eliminations with each of the 30 weapons you choose to grind out. Now, as for the military in itself, seeing as these are simply just eliminations rather than actual critical kills for other master camos, this already makes this grind a lot easier and less stressful, meaning you don't have to be greedy or thirsty and have to go look around for kills. Even putting one single bullet in an enemy that shortly dies after will give you that elimination camo progress, and that makes this, like I said, a lot easier than maybe the likes of Singularity, where you have to get headshots in multiplayer, or the likes of maybe in Genesis, where you have to do the same thing. It makes it so much easier having just elim, so just bear that in mind. You also don't even need to be the one who gets that kill, like I said. As long as you damage that enemy with any weapon and either of your teammates or the other enemies, of course, eliminate your weakened opponent, you'll also progress that camo. So that is really good for understanding how you're going to sort of pace yourself around the map and making sure you get as many eliminations as possible. It's also important to consider the map as well, as landing spots, in order to be most efficient, landing spots are going to be a significant starting point. Getting your game underway really efficiently is a strong point to be in, and personally for me, I simply just grinded out the Resurgence playlist, having both played Haven's Hollow and Rebirth Island, as I found those 15 to 20 minute games, which is approximately what it takes roughly to win a full game or play out a full game. I was getting roughly between between 35 and 40 kills, maybe 40 to 45 elims on average. That is on the casual game mode, of course. I'm not a cheater. We don't play the normal one. We're just doing it on the casual because, of course, it's a lot easier. In normal, I do not get anywhere near that. That would be insane. But that did also include occasionally using the melee weapons, which is what I would suggest as another tip. Use your melee as early in the game as possible. When you know you have found a bot player, someone that you could just take advantage of getting a knife kill with, that is what I would suggest as well as a little bit of an advanced tip to save yourself from being stuck later on with having to either do them. Of course, you may not want to go for them. There are only 30 weapons needed, and there are 35 weapons in this game, but to save yourself from having to do the launchers, I would suggest doing this as well in my personal experience. For landing spots, generally I think this comes to a combination of hotspots and safety for comfort. It's like a combination of the two that you need to consider. Being comfortable in your game to an extent is more important, I guess, when you land, allowing you to get the loot and stuff like that and to get around. Finding loot is more important, as well as staying alive, combined with landing somewhere hot where various types of players are going to be, can sort of significantly increase your chances of efficiency, finding early and easy eliminations, using floor loot weapons as quickly as possible, as of course, like I said as well, melee weapons. These are the sort of things that I combined. Some games I went to the most hottest spot and just used whatever I could find as quick as possible, whereas sometimes I needed to get a loadout as quick as possible, so I went to a money spot, somewhere safer, where I was going to get a quick loadout and then got the desired loadout or weapons that I was going for in that game. And that way I found this to be a really good sort of combination to be efficient and getting this camo quicker. Then, like I said, either using floor loot for the rest of the game, whether you wanted to just stick with those weapons that you found, or using your own loadout. Saving your loadout in the background, like leaving it unattended, was also a good strategy that I implemented multiple times at certain points to utilize weapons that I found on the floor, and then also use the actual loadout itself as a backup for when I did die, or if I died, that I could use that loadout and go for the different guns I wanted to use and get that win or whatever it may be, combining all of these factors to get yourself a win, go further in the game, get more kills against even real players, combining each of these key points will massively help you out, I promise you. Like I said, landing, using guns that you find off the floor is a good starting point. If you're always just relying on a loadout, it's going to be a lot harder. I know obviously you don't have the attachment and you want to be more comfortable. You might even want to just show off your camos or whatever you have if you have in previous modes, but using floor loot will significantly save you time, I promise you. But that's pretty much it for the military camos. It doesn't get more simple than that. Take on board these tips and tricks and strategies, and I promise you, you'll become more efficient at getting all of those eliminations as quick as possible. As for the special camos, these are honestly really easy. The biggest thing I would say where you should do where possible is track which weapons are nearly onto these special camos prior to your next game, so you can ensure you add any sort of specific requirements, such as maybe a suppressor or even an extended mag, which some guns will specify, and that you have these in hand and can continue your grind without actually being held up or without wasting any eliminations because you weren't aware your gun isn't going to be progressed because you're lacking that attachment because it's a floor loot gun, or because your loadout simply just does not have a suppressor. Whatever it may be, having this in mind and being sure of what the next sort of special requirement is going to save you a lot of time. Promise you, if you're ever stuck and you feel like you don't know what it is, simply just sacrifice that weapon for the remainder of that game and go back to it after, once you've learned what you need to do. Simply just move on to another weapon, ideally if you can in that same category, as we want to progress towards the Starglass diamond equivalent camo as soon as possible, and you'll want to have an entire category ready, which I'll emphasize shortly as to why, because this is going to be where you're going to gain sort of more efficiency and be more effective in your camo grind. Generally, the special camos typically require 5 eliminations or sort of kills for 3 special separate camos, and then you're onto the final camo, which of course is gold, which is really easy in this game. And once you get the hang of them, you can literally complete the specials between 5 and 10 kills, depending on of course what the gun and the camo requirement is. But it's really easy to get these done, and like I said, especially if you are aware of what you're trying to do. For the submachine guns, one of the specials is always get 5 limbs while sliding, where this can be slightly more difficult, but simply just weaken up the enemy. If you have ammo, do it with the main weapon you're trying to get the slide kills with. If it's a low ammo gun or you're not confident with your shot, use another weapon to weaken them, switch to the submachine gun, and then simply line them up, slide into the gunfight, and consider maybe even pre-firing straight away. And within 5 to maybe 10 limbs doing this, you'll easily complete this camo, and of course along the way you'll do the other 2, which is often just a limb shortly after sprinting, and either 5 limbs whilst moving or without taking damage. For the ARs, marksman rifles, sniper rifles, and LMGs, they also have similar requirements, but each one of these also requires getting 5 headshot kills as one of those 3 specials. Shotguns is always getting 5 limbs while sliding, ADS, and either hipfire or sort of moving target. And then also for the pistols, they are similar as well, but they also require 3 limbs per special camo, but all 3 need suppressed elimination, so consider this as well. And finally, for the melee weapons, these require even less, with only needing 2 limbs shortly after sprinting, whilst moving, and without taking damage. So as you can see, pretty basic in itself. Learning what they are can be the sort of bit where it holds you up, but other than that, the special eliminations and special camos are really, really easy. And once you've completed these, along with the military camos, you are onto the golden Damascus camo, which is honestly really simple, with having to get 5 kills in a single match 5 times for all weapons, except for the pistols and the melees, which is only in 3 matches. So as you can see, if you are able to get around 30 or more kills a game, you'll have at least 1 gold gun every game once you're on this camo. But like I said, for me, I use various weapons all the way throughout, floor loot and loadouts, and that's made it a lot more efficient. Of course, I didn't get a category or weapon done as quick as possible, but that's not the goal here. You're trying to get the final camo quicker, and in my opinion, spreading it out and changing up the weapons based on what you find and what you find more comfortable as well, this is all going to be more useful. And also knowing from my past experience doing the Abyss camo last year, which was the Warzone master camo, to not leave myself with the worst weapons last. So I made sure to use things like the Echo shotgun and the Warden in Warzone, which is awful, and other weapons such as maybe the Coda pistol or the Velox. Harder weapons, not bad or anything like that, they're just harder weapons in my opinion, less reliable and weaker weapons relative to the likes of maybe strong meta ARs, snipers, submachine guns, all of these guns in my opinion, which I would have done typically early in my grind for the more enjoyable experience. Having these to leave to later is definitely going to help you in being more efficient with time management. Sometimes using the best and meta weapons first and getting them done as soon as possible is also a reliable strategy, but seeing as the grind doesn't take too long, those weapons aren't going anywhere, and most people just drop them anyway when they are eliminated, and you can also resort to them, like I said, later in your game if you leave a loadout. So all of these things considered, I promise you, I think this is more beneficial. So maybe take this on board and consider doing this strategy, using things like I said, the Nova line, the Echo, anything that's awkward, maybe a Warden or anything like that, a marksman rifle, a shotgun that you maybe don't like and you find it's going to be more difficult and hold you up later. Try and manage doing that early on with one of your two weapons as a primary or a secondary. But then also I alluded to earlier, now that you've done the military and special camos and you're onto this golden Damascus, personally I do think it's more efficient if you focus on a set category of weapons. Ideally, if you can, try and do the smaller categories first, because once you unlock the golden Damascus for the majority of, or all of course, of those weapons in that category, you can jump straight onto the Starglass camo, and having weapons on this as soon as possible is going to save you a lot of time as well. And the reason I said the shorter categories of weapons, i.e. not subs or ARs, you can simply try and do the pistols as early as possible, so that every single time you load into a new game, you will spawn with the Jaeger pistol, and you can always try and go for a quick bloodthirsty with that. Same as the knife, if you can get the melees done early as possible in terms of getting them both gold and get onto that Starglass, being available to be able to try and get these sort of bloodthirsties as early as possible, because I think Starglass is probably, in my opinion, the hardest category in this entire grind. It's not difficult, I'm just saying it's the hardest out of all of the specific categories, because getting a bloodthirsty for most people is not the easiest task. Of course, in casual, you can get lucky, you can find 5 bots unattended without having any sort of real person interfere and bother you, but that's all sort of hypothetical scenarios. It doesn't always play out that way, and certain circumstances can make it far more difficult. So in my opinion, get this camo unlocked as early as possible and try and grind out the earlier categories, whether it's a 3 category like snipers or shotguns or pistols, or whether it's the melees. Just try and get an earlier category, and I found that this to be a far more efficient method. The Starglass camo, like I said, is just to get 5 bloodthirsties 5 times, which to earn 5 kill streaks 5 times for some players, like I said, this can be very difficult, but having a weapon on this camo as early as possible in the grind is really ideal. And like I said, if you find bots, play casual, this is going to be far more efficient and easier and stress-free as well. It's just going to be useful to have one of your primaries or secondaries, this weapon to hand on this camo. It's perfect for these opportunities, and the sooner you get these opportunities and this category onto this, the less likely you're going to waste kills later, and also simultaneously making you more efficient. But once you master a category, focus on the next and work your way through multitasking, if possible, 2 or more categories of weapons, which is ideal for becoming more efficient and just speeding up the time to unlock this epic looking, more awesome master camo in a 1 day's playing time, game time, which is definitely doable. And like I said, it's what I've done in my grind. So these are all of the tips that I've found along the way. And then finally, we are on absolute 0. Now, once you unlock Starglass on 30 or more weapons, you are now able to complete the final camo, which requires you to simply get 10 elims whilst in the top 10. Now, look, I don't know if this is meant to be bugged or if it is bugged, but what I do know is it's being in the top 10 eliminations is definitely not what it says on the description. It is simply just 10 eliminations. It doesn't matter if you're in the top 10, but on Resurgence, this is of course a lot easier, as there's only 15 teams, and you can come back every like 20-30 seconds. If you play on your own, it's a little bit easier because you can get things like loadouts for a lot cheaper, but you also have the chance of dying, so it's all of the risk management that you need to consider. But in my opinion, playing around on Resurgence is definitely far more efficient, and you find so many more kills earlier on in the games, and I just found that doing this final camo on Resurgence was always going to be a no-brainer for myself anyways, even if I didn't play this as a standard. But this final camo is simply just get 10 eliminations with all of those 30 weapons that you have Starglass, and once you've done that, you simply will just get this at your own pace. Play at your own pace. The faster you are, of course, the quicker you'll get this camo. You'll encounter more enemies by playing faster. You'll rack up more eliminations, but that, of course, comes with risk and a chancing at failing early in your game. But, of course, if it is Resurgence, there is no reason that you shouldn't play aggressive, at least at the start, especially if you have multiple chances, you have teammates, and, of course, it's not the Zone 4 where the Resurgence is closed. In my opinion, play faster. If you don't feel comfortable, try and push yourself out of your comfort zone, get more eliminations, get yourself in the mix, because, again, it's not kills, it's eliminations. So putting damage into random enemies and making sure you applied some sort of damage with the weapon you're trying to go for, these are all of the things that are going to speed up this journey for you guys so that you can get this final awesome looking master camo, which is of course Apocalypse. For myself, when I got to this final absolute 0, I'd already endured all of the painful part. This was the easiest part. It felt like I was just on cloud 9 flying at 100 mile an hour. I was finding guns off the floor, getting limbs, dropping them. I don't know how many games it took me, but it was no more than maybe 6 to 7 games where I'd done this camo. It felt so quick. It might have been 5. But regardless of the fact, it took me no more than 2 hours in real life time to get this final camo, because I was just using whatever I could find off the floor, picking it up, getting close to 10 or 10 limbs, switching it out and moving on. And eventually I found myself with my last game having to really track and figure out what I had to do in order to get this camo. But we did it so fast. I enjoyed this entire experience for the most part. But my honest overall thoughts, like I said at the start, I was going to give you my reflections. So honestly, if I was giving you a ranking of all of the 4 camos in terms of the grind, I would say this is the least enjoyable grind. Personally, for myself, I thought Genesis was by far the most enjoyable. Singularity and Infestation were about neck and neck, and this was my least favorite, purely because I just found, obviously I did play casual, so it did make this a lot easier, and it was so much easier than doing Abyss, which was the master camo last year in Warzone. So if you're talking about relative to last year's Warzone, if you guys got that and you guys have Abyss, then this is nothing compared to that. This is so much easier, and this is going to be like a breath of fresh air. But at the same time, I was playing casual for literally all of this grind. I didn't enjoy playing against PvP people and real people trying to use the worst weapons possible and playing against the World Series of Warzone wannabes, because at my skill level, it just seems to be that there are so many sweats in our lobbies, and that's not just me saying it, it's me, my friends, and others. It just feels like playing the most sweatiest Warzone. It's like playing ranked. If you guys are new to this channel, I play ranked, and it doesn't feel much different at times in some of these lobbies. But in casual, it seems to be like there's almost skill base in here as well, which I know sounds absurd, but there are only 12 other or 11 other players in these lobbies supposedly, and the rest are all filled with casuals and bots. But it just feels like either everyone in my lobby is Prestige Master and also has every Master camo in the game, or it just so happens that it's a coincidence that I'm playing against every person in the world that has these camos. But either way, the point is I'm making, in my lobbies, there was a lot of Prestige Masters, there was a lot of stacking teams, there were people running around with Apocalypse using MXR and NPC meta weapons and playing casual and sweating. So the experience in that sense, in my sort of own experience, it wasn't that enjoyable in comparison to the other grinds, which therefore what sort of makes me rank it lower. But on itself, on a standalone, would I recommend the camo grind? Yes, because if this is your first camo grind, I would say it's pretty good in terms of being fun and just easy to do. But if you guys have done all 3 of the previous like myself, and this is your final one, then it's up to you on whether you want to go for that final one. Because as a master camo sort of completionist player, I had to do it. It just had to be done regardless of whether I was going to use it or not. I do think it looks really cool, and I am happy that I've got the camo. But in truth, the Nexus camo is going to be what I probably put on my guns anyway, so I'm not really going to be using Apocalypse on any of my guns. So it kind of, in a way, feels like I've just sort of wasted it. But if you guys are just Warzone players, and you guys are simply just going to ever only use this camo anyway, then definitely do it. I would recommend it 10 out of 10. But like I said, I'm just giving you my experiences and thoughts based on my own reflections on the overall camo grind, which we'll talk about in much more detail in the video I'm going to upload shortly, which is going to be on the Nexus grind, summarizing all of the 4 categories and just giving you my final reflections. But that is pretty much it in itself. With that said, that is the grind. Hopefully these tips and tricks along the way and strategies will help you guys with both being better, being more efficient, and helping you get this camo a lot quicker. If you've enjoyed the video, of course, do not forget to like and subscribe. It massively helps me out. I would hugely appreciate any support. If you have any comments, tips or tricks about playing Warzone, the camo grind in Black Ops 7 in itself, or any suggestions about future videos that you want to see on this channel, let me know, guys, down below in the comments, and I will get right back to you. I am Visionless Gen. Hope you enjoyed the video again and found this useful, and I'll see you in the next one.